Alright guys, we got the S25 FE versus the S24 FE, and they look completely identical for the most part. There are some subtle differences, but the S25 is on the left, the 24 on the right here. So let's just go ahead and jump in and just kind of talk about the actual differences this year. And one of the first things you kind of notice when you pick both phones up is that the S25 does feel a lot lighter this year. So it's actually something that I actually really like, and it doesn't seem to be, it seems to be just a little bit thinner, but you could really barely tell the difference. But in the hand, it doesn't feel as like bulky. And then also you'll see that you do have thinner camera rings here. So hopefully you guys can see that it does look thinner. So as you go, maybe you can see it like this at this angle. Yeah, so to me it does give it a more kind of, premium look to it. So overall, there are some slight, design changes, like the matte finish on the S25. You have a glossy finish on the S24. And also another very small thing, the SIM tray slot got moved from the top on the S24, and now it's at the bottom. So that is pretty much it for hardware differences. They both have IP68 dust and water resistant, and like I said, they both look pretty similar. You do have stronger aluminum on the S25 FE. Alright guys, the difference in displays, it's pretty subtle. The first thing that pops out is going to be you have a slimmer bezels at the bottom here by a little bit. So you also have slimmer bezels at the top here as well. So it makes the S25 FE look a little bit better as far as the front design. And the overall display specs have not changed really at all, and they look exactly the same. They both have a dynamic AMOLED display. It's 120 Hz HDR10 plus, 1900 nits peak brightness. They're both 6.7 inches, and they both still have the 1080p panel, 385 for the PPI, and the glass pretty much remains untouched. It is still the Victus Plus. So yeah, so as far as the colors and everything goes, like I said, they look exactly the same. So there's really no difference here when it comes to, an upgrade in screen quality. We didn't get the 2600 nits peak brightness that I thought we were going to get. But the display is fine on both of these phones, honestly. And like I said, it looks much better with the slimmer bezel. But for the most part, it's not a real upgrade at all. Let's talk about the specs a little bit more here. The S25 FE has Android 16. We have 7 years of majorOS updates. The Exynos 2400, 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM on this base model. And then on the S24 FE, we have Android 15 currently on here. This also gets a 7-year pledge. And then we have the Exynos 2400E. We have 128 gigs and 8 gigs of RAM on the base model. As you guys can see, the processors are, pretty similar. So you're going to get pretty similar results here with the multi-core score, showing the biggest difference here. And it's really not that big of a difference. Also, if we look at our Wildlife Extreme test here, we do get a slight bump up in FPS at 23.32, and we have 17.75 on the S24 FE. As far as performance, you're really not going to notice anything different here for the most part. So it's not really an upgrade as far as like graphics performance and just general performance. It's nothing that anybody will really notice in real life. If we do see anything like better animations or something like that, and I'll do a full speed test, it might be really just due to One UI 8. I don't think it really has anything to do with the CPU. I don't have heating issues on the S24 FE, and I haven't experienced any heating issues on the S25. So again, the processors are extremely similar. Even with the S24 running One UI 7, the animations look pretty similar here for the most part. So yeah, guys, I think this might be a better upgrade. Maybe somebody who is holding on to an S20 FE, and you're like, hey, maybe it's time to upgrade. And like I said, these will be on carriers. So for people who have an S24 FE, if you're a fan of the FE lineup, you'll probably skip this year. It's not really a big deal. It's a more of an aesthetic kind of upgrade here. Yeah, they feel like exactly the same here. Let's go ahead and actually open up PUBG. All right, so one of the kind of bizarre things here, out the box, you actually only get 60 frames on PUBG with the S25 FE. For some reason, this phone should be able to do at least 90 frames. We know that it's not going to do 120, even though it can, but they don't optimize it for that. You would have to get older flagship or I guess 24 plus or something like that. But we actually do get 90 frames on the S24 FE. Now I'm wondering if PUBG will get an update or something, and it'll bring 90 frames. But typically, every time I say that usually never happens. What it launches with optimization is typically what it will have for the rest of its lifespan. That's usually how that goes. But yeah, so it is kind of bizarre that you don't get 90 frames on the S25 FE. There are some subtle differences with One UI 8, which I'm probably going to make a separate video about. But as far as like the software, it's essentially the same. One UI 8 is not a big upgrade. And like I said, you're going to get One UI 8 on the S24 FE. Galaxy AI, there's nothing new here. It's the same thing. Photo ambient wallpaper, audio erasers here. Everything is here, which is nice. So, there's no difference there. Let's see if the speakers are upgraded. I mean, you have a slight sound increase on the S25 FE. I mean, they sound almost exactly the same. It just sounds like it's like just a little bit, like the bass is hitting a little bit harder. Yeah, I can't really say this is an upgrade because it's so minimal. So I don't think they've upgraded the speakers really at all. You just really can't tell the difference. Like I said, it sounds like the S25 FE is kind of like the bass is hitting a little bit hard. It kind of has a little bit of a cleaner sound, but it's so like minimal. It's really hard to tell. So be sure to let me know what you guys think, but I can't really hear that big of a difference. The fingerprint scanner is still optical. I don't have an issue with the fingerprint scanner. I know that's like a big thing with a lot of people. It's not the ultrasonic. So the ultrasonic, you could tap it like that. This one, you just have to hold it a little bit. It's not really that like big of a deal for me. Same thing with the S24. It still works very well. Alright, so what are the differences with the cameras? There really isn't that much of a difference at all. They both have a 50 megapixel standard. They both have an 8 megapixel telephoto with 3 times optical. That'll get you up to 30 times zoom. And both of these phones have a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and they both shoot an 8K 30. Where you will see a difference is that the S25 FE has a 12 megapixel selfie, shoots in 4K 60. The S24 FE has a 10 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K 60 as well. So you do have a updated selfie camera that's going to give you slightly better shots there. But the main sensors that you're going to be using majority of the time are untouched. This is an update that I thought was actually pretty decent. Again, it's nothing that is upgrade worthy, but I do like that we do now have faster charging. So we have 45 watts on the S25 FE versus the 25 watts. So it charges a little bit faster. It doesn't feel as slow. The battery also has increased in size. We now have a 4,900 milliamp hour battery on the 25, and we have a 4,700 on the S24 FE. And guys, the wireless charging is also a little bit faster. So we have 25 watts versus the 15 watts, and we still have, you know, reverse wireless charging on both. I'm gonna have to use it a little bit more, but I'm not expecting any significant screen on time because the processors are so similar, and just the way that the S25 FE has been draining, it has good battery life, but I don't think it's gonna be significant at all. So that is another area where I wouldn't really worry about upgrading. I would say this upgrade is not really for people with S24 FE at all. This is probably for someone who has maybe an S20 FE, S21 FE. Those phones you would benefit more and see a little bit more, you know, progression with the hardware and software and stuff like that. So yeah, so if you were thinking about upgrading, don't waste the money. Be sure to let me know what you guys think.